All right, Cyber Warriors, we're going to cover Syslog-ng, how to set up a server and what that looks like. We're going to follow the instructions that I put together on a how-to off of my website, which is cybersecurity-bull.com. So check it out and we'll go from there. So on this one, we're going to use Ubuntu and we're going to set up the server side of it. So you can go to the how-to text, little write-up that I have, and follow along or follow this video. We're going to get right to it. I'm not going to get into the details of what Syslog-ng is. If you want on my how-to write-up, it's going to give you all the details on there. So we'll jump right into it. First thing you want to do is make sure that your system is up to date. And that's simple, sudo app update. And then if you have any packages that can be upgraded, you would do a sudo app upgrade and then run it from there. In this case, we don't have those, so we don't need to worry about that. So next step is we're going to do sudo app. We're going to install Syslog-ng. And it really shouldn't take very long. Once it installs, it's going to have all the basic configs in there, and we're going to really just keep this simple. This video is part of one of my Crayon version series. I have an intro video that's going to explain what that is, so I won't go into that right now. So on this one, what we want to do is once you've installed Syslog-ng is we need to check what the version is of Syslog-ng that's installed. In this case, it's Syslog-ng. You can see this 3.35.1. We need to make a note of the 3.35, and the reason for that is based on the config that we're going to get into. So from there, what we're going to do is we're going to modify the config file. But first thing we want to do is we want to make a copy of the original config file. So we want to back it up. So we're going to do sudo copy, and then this lives in Syslog-ng, and you can see the syslog-ng.conf. And then what we're going to do is we're going to run that path again, same file, but then we're going to do a dot back. So what that does is in the worst case scenario, we screw up the whole config. We're able to back it up for the original and go from there. So now from there, what we'll do is I'll actually get into that directory so you can see what that looks like. And now you can see there is syslog-ng comp and the backup file. So we want to modify the syslog.g comp. If I can type it correctly. And what you notice first thing is this version that's in there is 3.27. I'm going to change that to 35 and make sure your numlock's on 35. And then from here, what we're going to do is we're going to actually go to the bottom. And if you follow along in the instructions that I have set up, the section that we want to edit or where we want to add the basic config that we have in there, it's going to actually be, we'll just put it in between here. So from my website on there, you can actually just copy and paste that over here. You're in the terminal using Nano. You can do a Control-Shift-V will paste, Control-Shift-C will copy from the terminal. So just keep that in mind. So when you look at this, what we have is we have the sources network, and we have that set up. So we've got it looking at, so we have UDP and TCP, and it's off 514. So Syslog runs off of Syslog-ng. It'll run off of port 514. Destination, we're going to have it as remote. So it's going to be stored in var log Syslog-ng remote. And then this is set up so whatever host is sending logs to it, it's going to pull that remote IP, which you'll see here shortly. So from here, Control X, Y, and then enter is going to actually save that. So that is going to get that first part of it set up. From here, what we're going to do is we're going to actually change into the var log directory. And if you look at that, there's all sorts of fun stuff in there. But what we need to make is a folder or a directory for the remote. And we're using this make dir, which is going to make the directory with the tac p. What that tac p does is if the directory isn't there, it's going to create it for us. So since we're in the directory, we're making a directory in var log as syslog-ng and then remote. So we're creating both of those. And then from there, the other thing we're going to look at is we need to change the ownership on that. So chown, and off of that one, we're going to do attack capital R, which means recursive. So it's going to make sure it gets everything throughout of all the out of all the files, the directories and files that would be located in there. So we're already in var log, and so what we want to do with that is to change that to syslog and syslog. So if you look here on the directory that's up here, we have root and root. And so in this case, we're changing it to syslog and syslog of who would have permissions to, or who the owner would be for those directories. In this case, we're going to go syslog and g. And the last thing we want to do is we want to chmod, which is going to change the permissions, attack capital R, which is going to be recursive, and we're going to do 755. So those permissions, I have another write-up on my website, and it's going to be under the basic command line for Linux. If you go in there, I have a section, kind of a blurb that explains using the numerical fashion of this to be able to modify your permissions. So we're going to do 755, and then same thing, syslog and G, and it's recursive, so it'll apply it from there on out. All right, we have both of those in there. So now what we need to do is system's been installed. We're going to restart it because it's probably already started as we installed it, but it's the easiest way that I do it. So restart, syslog, and G. And then once it's been restarted, we're going to enable syslog-ng. What that does is it'll start on reboot. If you were to power it off, turn back on, whatever the case might be, it's going to enable it and continue to run when you have it on there. So let that start. And then what we want to do is let's just check the status. And we can see that it is active and running. Don't have any errors, nothing failed along the way. So we are set up to go from there. So one of the things you want to look at, just to test from the local host, which is the one that we're on, is you can see in here that we do have the folder set up, which is going to be right here. And if we were to change into that, you're going to see there's remote, and then that was the directory that we created. We'll change into remote, and then we'll see there's nothing in there yet. So we're going to do logger, and this is going to check. We're going to look at two different things. So we're going to do one that's going to be remote, and then one that's going to be local. So if we do logger, and then let's follow my instructions here, test from localhost. You need to see nothing is in the remote section because it's not coming in remote. We're logging, we're sending a message locally. So that local log should be, oops. All right. Terminal didn't want to work for a minute. Don't want to put you through that. So we did a logger test from localhost, and then we want to look at that log. So where that's going to actually go is into syslog. So the way that we want to look at that is we're going to sudo grep tac I, so it's case sensitive. And then we'll just actually look for that message, test from localhost. And then we want to put the file, which is just syslog. And we can see that it did show up there. So when you use the logger command, it did push it there, gave us a date and time. So we're successful there. So the next step is we're going to change directories. We're going to go into syslog-ng, into remote, see nothing is there. Now we're going to send a message using the logger, but then using by IP. So one of the things you need to do is you can do an IPA to look up what the IP address is. So in this case, we can see it's 10.02.7. So we're going to do logger tac n, 10.0.2.7. And then we're going to do attack capital P, which is port 514. And then we'll do test from the local, sorry, not local, from the remote host. Now, technically, this isn't from the remote host, and I'll show you. We'll spin up another box, and we'll connect those so you can see it log from one Ubuntu instance to another Ubuntu instance, which is going to be this one. So in that case, we've sent the logger to 10.0.2.7 on port 514, and then you're going to see it's right there. So from there, we can just cat that file, and you can see, and you can see that that came through as test from the remote host. So following along on my write-up, this walks you all the way through these steps. It's exactly what I'm following, so that way we can make sure that we're on the same page. So that's been successful. We know that it's set up, and this is the Syslog server side. So let's get a client machine set up, and then we will send logs to the server side. All right, so we're on the client side of things. So what we're going to do is, I already installed Syslog-ng, same steps I did before on the server side. Those are all going to be the same. The difference is we're going to modify the config file to allow the logs to ship remotely. So same thing we did before, but what we're going to do is we're going to copy the files, Syslog-ng, and the reason we do this is so we have a backup. Most importantly, have a backup for your backup. And copy there. All right, and then we want to modify that file now. Syslog-ng, and then syslog.com. So same thing as before on the version number, it's still 35. No block still is installed. There we go. And then we're going to go all the way to the bottom. Same section that we modified on the server side. We're going to just paste that in there. So our cursor there from my write-up, we're just going to copy that. Control-Shift-V. It's going to be in there. So the changes we need to make are the server that it needs to go to. So we know this is 10.0.2.7. And that's set up. So we're going to close it, Control-X, Y, Enter. And then we need to walk through the same steps as we're going to restart it and then enable it. So sudo systemctl, we're going to do a restart, syslog, ng. Then we're going to do an enable, systemctl, enable, and syslog, ng. So it's set up and we're ready to go. So right off the bat, we should be able to see logs going to the other server. So what we're going to do is pull up both of these. So we have Ubuntu B, which is the client, Ubuntu A, which is the server. Get a little bigger. All right, so on this one, we're going to look at it and we have this server already logged in. So if we check this one on Ubuntu B, we can see the IP is 10.0.2.15. And we can see that the logs are already going over there. So just to test that, we can do a logger. And this is from do test from local host. We'll do B. The reason for that is because it is local, but when we log it, it's actually shipping all those local logs over here to your Syslog server. So we can see that the logs are increasing, as we can see by the size that's here. But what we're going to do is we'll just cat that file for 15, and you can see here's a cool trick. So sudo bang bang is going to put in the last command that you put in. And you can see that you just cat that whole file that's in there, test from localhost B. If there were more logs and you need to search it, you can grep it. You can use grep, and that's going to search through all of those logs. Or in this case, to where we just did it, we could always do a sudo tail and same thing for 15, and then just look at the end of it. Not enough logs to really be concerned, but you can see that these logs that are actually coming from the client machine. Really basic setup. There's tons of stuff you can do with it. There's all sorts of filtering you can do for it, but go read the write-up. I'll give you a lot more detail on what it is. Just wanted to be able to run you guys through what this is and provide a demo for it. So thanks for checking in. Please subscribe, and we'll see you on the next video.